Hi there. Today we're going to create a long press menu interaction. We kind of have a sort of a photo app thing here that I threw together, so kind of like Instagram. The idea is that when you press and hold on a element, you can get a contextual menu that appears. In this case, it's allowing for sharing or commenting. When you move your thumb towards one of these menu items, it will react to the proximity of your thumb. So this is made using conditions, which are the steepest part of Pix8's learning curve. It's not coding, but it's more similar to coding than anything else in Pix8. It's similar to JavaScript. Within it you have properties and operators and values that you need to consider while you do this. So I wanted to do this because we haven't covered this in any of the previous tutorials. And so once you get your mind around how to work these, a lot of your other prototypes will come together much easier, and you'll find that you have a lot more control with this. So I've already got the background placed in here. There aren't that many assets, so we can place those in. So we'll just start dragging them in. We'll set them down. We're going to bring in the close button, the comments button, and the share button. We'll center the close button right in the middle of this photograph. And then we'll place the buttons at their outside or opened positions. And the reason we do this is just so we can place them and figure out a good spot for them. That way we know where we will tell them to move when opened. So we'll select the comments first, and let's move this to 259 at 206. And then we'll go to share, which we will place at 68 and 206. And then for close, we'll leave this at 162 and place it down at 271. And before we set any move animations, we're going to create a new layer. This is going to be the long press button. Now currently you can't set animations based on taps to occur anywhere on the screen. So we're going to make the layer that we can, or where we can tap this. It's not quite as detailed as you might want it to be, but if you're just creating a prototype to show off and you kind of have a scripted story, it's okay if you can just tap in one area. Whatever works to get the point across is what we're trying to do here. So I'm going to make this colored, just set a green, lower the opacity down so that it doesn't get in the way of anything. That way we can keep track of it, and at the very end we'll turn this down once we have everything working the way we want it to. So we're going to rename this to long press, and let's add a long press interaction to it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to tell these buttons that we want them to move when long press is tapped. And what we're going to do is have these start scaled down, and then when the button is pressed, it's going to scale up and move out. So we'll come here, we'll add a scale animation, and then a move animation. And these are going to be the same for both. So we'll call this scale set, so that we can have it set down to 0 when the screen is loaded. And we want this to be instant. And I'm going to turn this off, that way I can still see it. We'll turn it back on later. Then we're going to add the move, and we're actually going to add one more scale animation. So we'll call this one move open. It's going to be when long pressed is long pressed. And we're going to tell it to go to where it is right now. So we'll say 68 and 206. And let's use a spring curve here. We want this to be fun and bouncy. Set the tension at 250. And then scale up is going to occur with long press. Say we want this to go to 1. Let's do a spring with this as well and use the same tension. Do the same thing for comments. I'll add a scale, move, and scale. Set our scale set for when the screen is loaded. Go down to 0, and it'll be instant, and we'll turn this off for now. Move open when long press is pressed, and it's going to be at its current location of 259 and 206 pixels down from the top with the spring tension of 250. And then scale up with long press, scale to its 1 times its size, spring of 250. And then we'll do the same thing for close. Now close isn't going to move, so we're just going to tell it to scale up, or scale set, and then we're going to have a scale up. So 2 scale animations, set this one, scale set. When the screen is loaded, let's go down to 0. Oops, and this will be instantaneous. And then scale up when long press is pressed to 1 times its size, spring of 250. And now we can place these buttons where they need to be. So they're going to start stacked on top of this close button, and they're going to spring out, so that's at 162 and 271. You can just kind of drag these over it and make sure that they're in the right spot. Just like that. And then we can turn on this scale set so we can see if what we're doing is working the way we want it to. So once that's loaded, press and hold, and they spring out just like that. Great. So then let's set the close, that way we can get rid of these. What we'll do is we're going to make it so that we can actually have these close after, or if you drag your thumb over it, but just for now we're going to have this set so when you, or close when you tap on the X. So we'll add another scale animation. We're just going to do the reverse of what we did. So scale, close, tap for this one, since we're going to have 2 different ways to close this. This will be when, nope, we actually need to add a tap animation to this first, or interaction, so we'll drag that onto the close there. So now we can do when close is tapped, go down to 0, and we're going to leave this easing curve the way it is. We don't want it to scale, because if we do, it'll actually go down to 0 and then it'll bounce back up and you'll see it and it won't look right. So we'll do that. Do the same thing for here. Let's add a scale animation and a move animation. Name this scale close tap. Tell it to go to 0. And then move close tap when close is tapped. And we'll tell it to go to its current position, back at 162 and 271. We'll do the same thing for share. 1 scale, 1 move. Name this scale close tap. Down to 0. Then move close tap. Back to its position of 162 and 271. And then one more thing so that we can actually move this long press layer. We'll come in here to interactions and let's add a drag interaction to it, and we'll leave this free. That way we can come in here and move it. So now if we open these, if we move this out of the way and we can tap on close, they close the way we want them to. Great. So now I want to make it so that when these are open, if I drag this, my thumb towards these buttons, they'll react to the proximity of my finger. So the way we're going to do that is with conditions. And you have to imagine the screen as a map. So we have this green box up top. This is representing our thumb, and it has a line down the center of it. That's the horizontal center. Now it seems confusing because this line is going vertical. If you imagine a line going horizontally across this layer, you want to see the center point. That's what it's going to be marking when we set these conditions. So we actually imagine a line going from top to bottom. Now if it's a vertical center, you would imagine a line going horizontally. So we have on the screen the pixel range of where we want this to react based off where the layer's horizontal center is. So if we drag our thumb within the area of 152 pixels and 224 pixels, the center close button is going to react. If we drag it past anywhere from 0 to 130, the button on the left is going to react. And if we drag our thumb anywhere past 249 to the right edge of the screen, the button on the right will react. So first we'll do the easy one, which is going to be this comments button. So let's add a scale animation to this. And we'll call this scale with drag. And this is going to be based off of long press's drag position. And we're going to do with duration to final value, that way we can add a condition. So the way that we make these conditions work is by calling out a layer ID, which in our case is going to be the long press layer, telling it to animate based off of one of the layer properties, which we're going to use the horizontal center, and say that whenever that property is past a certain point or within a certain point, to allow the animation to occur. So what we'll do is we'll get the layer ID for long press. If we click on it, we can see up here it's long_press. This is how they're all formatted. We'll come back to comments. I'm just going to paste it. So we're going to say if long press's center, horizontal center, is greater than 249, so it's past that 249 pixel line, we want this to scale up, let's say 1.2 times its size. And we're going to keep this same spring easing curve. So now we can see that if I drag this layer, this horizontal center, this line in the middle, past 249, this 249 pixel line, this expands up the way we want it to. But it stays up, so if I come back, it's already expanded up. What I need to do now is tell it to go back down. The way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to come down here, we'll add one more condition, it's an else condition, and it's going to be the same thing, just backwards. So if long press, this horizontal center, is less than 249, tell it to go back to 1. And we're going to use the linear easing curve. So once I get that up, if I go past, got that working just like this. Simple enough. So now let's do the same thing for the share button. Add a scale animation. Call this scale with drag. It's going to be based off of long presses, drag position, with duration of final value. So for this one, I'm going to do this layer ID, long presses, center, horizontal center. Now if this is less than 130, because we're moving from right to left, so what we're going to say is if it goes to 130 or 129 or 128, passes that line, we want this to scale up with our animation that we have, 1.2 with a spring of 250. Then we'll add the condition to tell it to go back down. CX. And if it's greater than 130, cross over that line, this is going to go back down to 1. So now if I open this up, Drag it past 130, it expands. Drag it past that line, back, it goes back down. So now it works both ways. So now we'll set the close button to work. Now what we want to do with this is tell it to only react when we're within a certain range, not just going past a range. So we'll add a scale animation to this. Call this scale with drag. Again, based off long presses, drag position with duration of final value. Tell this to scale up with the spring. And the condition for this is actually going to require a logical operator. So what that means is we're going to have kind of like two conditions in one. So we'll add the layer ID for long press. We'll say if the horizontal center is greater than 152, that's our left edge that we want, and long press's horizontal center is less than 224, it'll scale up. Then we'll add one more condition. This is going to be an else if condition. So if long press's horizontal center is greater than 224, so outside of that bounds, and long press's horizontal center is less than 249, it'll scale down to 1. So now if I open this up, if I drag this to the right, it goes out, come back in, it opens up. So now we need to make it work so that if we go from out here to left to scroll back, to shrink back down. So we'll add one more. It's going to be working the same way, but just for this left side. So flare ID's horizontal center is greater than 130, and its horizontal center is less than 152. Scale back down to 1 with the easing curve that we have set. So we'll open this up. Now if I drag out, it only scales up if I'm above it. And go either direction, and it opens this way. Awesome. So now we'll add some of the smaller details. I have a scrim that I want to show up when this opens up. So I'm just going to place this right here, right in the center. And then I also have these little blurbs. It's comments blurb, share blurb, so we know what we're seeing when we go over them. And let's put the scrim at the bottom, right above Photos app, but underneath all of the rest of this. And make sure long press is always at the top. We'll move comment text to its position at 253 and 176. And we'll move share over to 62 and 176. Now we want these to hide on screen load, so we'll add 2 scale animations. These are going to be scale set. So we'll just say when screen's loaded, scale down to 0 instantaneously for both of these. Then what we're going to do is have these scale up when we hover over, just like we did with the buttons. And it's going to be really easy to do that. We can actually just copy the conditions over. So we'll go to scale. Let's call this scale with drag. Based off long presses, drag position continuously to final value. Now this one is for share, so we'll come into this share button, get our scale with drag condition, select it, copy it, come back over here, and just place it right in here. We'll tell it we want to scale up with our easing curve. Then we're going to add the conditions so that when we go out of it, it goes down. So we'll come back over here, get this else if, select it all, copy it, paste it in, and I want it to scale down to 0. We'll do the same thing for comment text. Add the scale animation. Based off of long presses drag position with duration to final value. And this is for comments, so we'll come over to this comments button and grab its conditions. So the first one, copy that, paste it in here. We want this to scale up to 1 with our easing curve. Then add another condition, come back and copy it, select it, copy it, and then we'll paste it in here and tell it to go down to 0. And then real quick, set this scrim, set its opacity to 0. We'll add a fade animation to it. We'll say when long press is pressed, it will fade into 100%. And we'll just leave this easing curve as is. So when I press it, it opens up. So if I move over here, it's this way, over here, it's this way, and it goes down. It's just how we want it to work. Awesome. So now let's make these close when we let go over this close button. This is the only button we're going to make work. We're not going to make the comment or the share buttons work, but we're going to have these close when I release this over the close button. Now what we're going to do is basically do the same thing. We'll say if we release this within a certain area, everything will close. So the first one we'll do is the close one. So we'll add a scale. Call this scale with drag close. That's based off of long presses drag release. And we're going to copy these conditions for the expansion. We're going to use just the same conditions. So copy here, we'll say if this first one, we'll tell it to go to 0. We'll leave that easing curve. Let's make sure that's working. If I open this up, drag out, let go when it's over here, it scales down. Perfect. Now we'll do the same thing for these other two. Come to comments, call this scale with drag close, and we're going to use the same conditions for the close one. We'll say if long presses drag release, just paste that in there, tell it to go to 0. Then we're going to also do the move animation because we want it to go back in. So we'll say move, call this move with drag close. Based off of long presses drag release. Bring it back to its current position because it's in the closed position right now of 162 and 271. Now we'll do the same thing for share. Let's just add this scale animation and move animation. Let's scale with drag close, just like before. Paste in our condition, tell it to go to 0. Then move with drag close. based off long presses, drag, release, paste that condition. We'll bring it back to 162 and 271. And let's also do the same thing for scrim. We'll tell this to fade out, add another fade animation, fade out, drag, close is what we'll name it. And the same thing. Tell it to fade to 0. Okay, so once we get this open, see this drag is working just how we want it to. And if I let go, it shrinks in and goes off. So now we have that working, we can come in here and we can make this invisible. So you're going to have to remember where the long press layer is, since we want this to be invisible, but it's just right in the center. Put it in there. I can drag it around, and it looks, you can imagine this is just, just on my thumb. At least that's what it looks like to anybody that you tell. And once you close it, it shrinks just like that. So one thing to keep in mind about this, I've turned the colored layer back on so you can see this. The areas of interaction that we've set up for these conditions are horizontal barriers. So you can see if I have my thumb dragged down all the way to the top, if I still cross over this line, it's still going to animate. Reason is because we don't have any like horizontal lines set up. So you could come in here and say, and basically kind of create a box and say, if you're crossed over this line and above, like say a line here or below here, kind of like how we did with the close button, animate then, and if you're outside, don't animate. But we're not going to do that today. I just wanted to keep this short just to kind of give you an idea of how conditions work and hopefully give you a better understanding so you can go in and try to figure out how to set that up yourself. So hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you next time.